right, welcome back to another episode of the Digital Health Podcast. We have an amazing show for you guys today. If this is your first time joining in, my name is Anthony Virgo. I spent the last 7 years at a health tech startup, but now I started my own AI automation and SEO company, along with my co-host Kazar, who unfortunately isn't going to be on this episode. Usually when we have our guests on, we kind of want to dissect and figure out how they got started within the industry. So being that we're in healthcare, there's so many different avenues of health that anyone could kind of be a journey into, whether you're a provider, whether you're a therapist, there's different ways where you could provide service. How did you get started in, therapy and this service of yourself? Was it something that you always wanted to do growing up, or were you in a different industry and then you transitioned into this?
Actually, first I wanted to go into law, and then I realized
And that's interesting. Law, all right.
I thought I don't really think that's really for me, and so that's how I ended, going into psychology. But recently, I don't. So I did that maybe for the first 15 years of my profession, and then it's more gravitated now, and it's a little bit more focused on trauma work, which I did with children and families, but now working with couples.
Okay. So I guess what is one misconception about maybe working with couples that the average person might not know about? Nothing from real life experience or nothing like no
Sure.
crazy stories, but what sort of a misconception that someone might not know? Because we have a lot of people that might go a different direction in servicing, like, they might actually do adolescents or people who specifically with like a substance abuse or a mental disorder. What about couples that's kind of unique to what you do on a day to day?
Okay. So is the question, why would some therapists avoid working with couples?
No. The why, not they shouldn't avoid. Why did you choose not to avoid, I guess?
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I sort of fell into it to be, more like historical. It was never really a thing that I thought about, like a population I thought about working with. I liked the concept. I guess it was just my focus on what I felt passionate about and wanted to advocate for, which was, again, children who have been in really traumatic situations, but also the families. And then somehow it just kind of trickled into couples. And was once I started working in group practice, it just so happened, I got more additional training for working with couples, real specific, one of those like evidence-based kind of things, working with couples. And then I added, trauma work, things like EMDR. And for some reason, maybe for me, it was the right time also to go more towards along that. So a misconception some people might have about couples is, oh, you're just gonna go there and air dirty laundry, or oh, they're just gonna tell me blah blah blah. A lot of times, because couples already sometimes they get stuck in that blame game, and
Right.
think I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna be the target, or they're just gonna tell me, what's wrong with me, or things like that, or that doesn't work. So a lot of it is a misconception of what they probably would already think if it was just for themselves going into therapy. Oh, therapy, this and that, and right. So that's probably one of the major misconceptions.
Right, because therapy already has like some sort of a stigma within like our industry. But for some reason I never really, for me myself, I never really equated the stigma to like maybe a couple therapist. Like I always, for some reason I always thought, or in my mind, when you did couple therapy, it was more purposeful for a purpose versus when you did therapy for yourself, it was like, you get that question like, well, I'm not crazy, I don't need to see a therapist, versus when you're doing it with a couple, you're really trying to work on the relationship, right? Not like on the individual level, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times too, the couples come in and you'll find that one of them is there because they've been given an ultimatum, or they'll say she made me or he made me, be here. And so, it can be a, myriad of reasons, but hopefully like once they stick to it, they start really seeing the benefit, and like anything else, right? You stick to it long enough and you start seeing the benefits.
Right, 1,000%. So how do I guess how do people who like want to reach you for your services? How are people interacting with you? Like, how do you get your clients? What is that process like?
It's different, there's different platforms. So things like Psychology Today, or you can Google search, or maybe LinkedIn, or referrals. There's also different, I also belong to a organization that's called The Home Within, that I actually really love because it's all volunteer work. But basically, it's just an organization that started way back in the day in San Francisco. And what they do is they provide, licensed therapists provide free therapy to anyone. It doesn't matter your age, that experience foster care. It's literally like for the
That's
rest,
amazing.
if they wanted
Amazing.
that. So just different places, different avenues, right? Sometimes it's referrals from another therapist, and things like that.
Okay, so are you mainly seeing people at a location like on site, or is it mainly virtual?
Most of my clients nowadays are virtual. Just some of them are in a different city in Florida, and I live in South Florida. So most is virtual, and even people who live down here, sometimes you want to just be comfortably, sitting on your, sofa and stuff like that. And then there's a few that they just have more of a preference of just having their own space, getting out of their home and stuff like that, and so they prefer to be in an office.
Right, right. So that's so I'm gonna shift gears a little bit to like the technology within healthcare, because that's one way you're in which you're able to serve clients in another way, right? Where even thinking about like me in New York, there's so many avenues or layers that I would have to take to go see my provider or therapist, right? Jumping on the subway, being on traffic. By the time I'm there, my session isn't about the session I want to talk to you about. It's about something that happened on the train, maybe. Right. So now that we have like telehealth, or you're able to see people virtually, it's been able to open up like the gates for people to access you more frequently or in the comfort of their home. Have you noticed like anything different from how people have reacted since actually being virtual versus in person over the years? Like, I know this is almost like a very new concept of telehealth, but just before the pandemic, everyone was going into the office to see everyone. And then after, we're on computer seeing everyone. So how has that impacted you? And what do you think the long-term effects on that has been?
I think it's just it's interesting in the sense that we've become so acclimated to just being home, right? Even a doctor's appointment, who would have thunk it? Oh, I can see my doctor. Like, back in the day, it's like you gotta jump on the train and you gotta do this, and wait in the doctor's office. The fun part, they give you the 9 a.m. and then they see you at 11. Go figure, right?
Right. Oh my God.
Yeah. So, well, it depends on the person's age, because if you have a client who's, let's say a 7-year-old, good luck with that one, right? Let's say it's a 7-year-old in Northern Florida. So I usually tend to encourage the parent, you may want to get, you know, treatment in person, because you got to go with the 7-year-old's energy. And what do 7-year-olds do when they go online and they start opening a page, or they start looking at it, like by the 15th minute, they're like, what? So
Not
it's
even paying
different.
attention.
Right. Yeah. Which, they're just being kids or being themselves. So now if it's the parents, totally different, right? Adults tend to be able to zoom in more and get more of a benefit. But also because we're talking about like uh just in terms of client care and medical and things like that, there are people who have real chronic issues. They're mental health, but they have a lot of like chronic issues. And for them, it's like a blessing. Oh, you mean I can like go online and someone can talk to me about my emotional functioning and what's going on with me and give me that real support that otherwise I would have to get in my car and and the older people get, the more you see things like with arthritis, or even just maybe sometimes it's anything having to do with maintaining the wheel and alignment and stuff like that. So actually it can be a real blessing. I think the only time I noticed that I'm just like, I don't think they see they can't they're not going to get the value at all, is when people log on and they want to be driving.
Oh yeah, that's the worst. That's the worst driving. Yeah.
This is, okay. And so I say to them, your safety is first. Please, if you can pull into a parking lot or something. I get it. Maybe they get stuck at work or whatnot. And so sometimes I think people forget the value of that one-on-one. Hey, let me make eye contact. And, sometimes that also kind of says a little bit more of just the rhythm and the pace of their lifestyle just to begin with. They're on the go and this and that and da da da, and so sometimes that could be a hindrance because, sometimes it's an indicator of how impersonal something that is very personal can kind of become the norm for somebody.
Right, right. Wow, that's a interesting. That's an interesting take there because I hadn't even like thought in all of the guests that we've had and talked through like something like that, like telehealth or just technology impacting. You might be the first one to like have maybe identify that someone not showing up in person could be something that they're avoiding as well. You know what I mean? Like they could be super, super comfortable in front of a camera, but maybe in person that might highlight something else. You know what I mean? So that's an interesting highlight there. Now we're in this age where like AI is like taking over or becoming a thing within healthcare. What is your perspective on that, or what have you heard about AI? Are you using AI, or what is it like in your day to day?
Within mental health, AI is right now it's a little bit more based on clinical notes. So there are these platforms depending. So for example, if a client uses EAP, which is the free therapy services that whatever, there's a contract that their employers have with these particular companies, and so via insurance and a package that the employer presents to the employee under the EAP, they get, let's say, 8 or up to 30 free sessions per year, right? Okay. So in these EAPs formats, now they have this AI where they say if you press this button, you are allowing your session to be recorded, right? And it's for AI purposes where, and I go like this because I'm just showing, my sort of distrust of it. It's like, what? I'm not gonna have this. Hello, it's supposed to be private. I don't know who's listening, and that whole mindset goes into play, right? And so I don't use it. I'm guessing they did their homework and they made it all, security based and blah blah blah, right? But my doubt is just a very, I think, normal way that a lot of people think. I don't know what are you actually? This is actually really private. This is actually it's like if they're recording literally visual the session, and that takes a lot to kind of wrap your mind around something that's always meant to be your own sacred space where you can be so vulnerable, and talk about things that, just a myriad of things that are really difficult to talk about. So that's a little bit more how AI is showing up in mental health. I'm sure there's some people that use it. They like it because it sort of writes out the note for them. Um, and maybe, some like things that regarding to trainings, however they may implement AI for use. But so far, that's sort of my take on it.
Okay. What about I guess some of the other providers in maybe down in Florida or in your area? Are you getting the sense that people are like as a whole, are people more so super skeptical about it? Or is it like, hey, I'm using it and this is coming down the pipeline and I'm adapting it? Like are you getting the sense that, we know like the large health systems or like large enterprise companies, they take some time to kind of like fully adapt new technology, where versus like private practices or smaller people are able to kind of adapt and use some things. Are you getting a sense that, people are like slowly taking on this new technology, or is it like still slow pace, you think?
The language in this field sounds a bit slower. So you only sort of really hear about it when it comes to this recording of sessions. So then it, does this nice little synopsis, like summary layout of what was said, and then, you just basically boop, submit. And a lot of therapists are using it. They're just, they're trusting, whatever the programming is. And That's really the only thing I can say that stands out. Again, I'm sure they use it also. They also use it in terms of like the platform, right? So whether it's something like Simple Practice or Compass or something like that, which is how it'll give you assistance. And so you'll see this thing of like, hey, you can, now ask questions via AI, and, gives you like this nice little summary, which actually sometimes is really helpful, right? Instead of a person typing and trying to, figure out like, what does this person need type of deal. And then also trainings that they provide. That's more of really where you see it. And the more that I hear about AI from other therapists, it really right now is just based on their clinical notes, because there's only so much that you can use it, unless you maybe share the screen with the client, and maybe you are using something generated from AI, like it's a teaching tool, like a psychoeducation presentation, or just a sharing. But that's what I've noticed so far.
Yeah, definitely. And same. So even the work that we do over at A Plus Active Services, like so we set up like a lot of AI receptionists, note transcribing and things like that. But there's so many different ways in which you can use AI to your advantage. But there's so many tools out there. It's confusing. A lot of people don't know what's what and what to use for what. And we always say, or we talk from a perspective, always build or always work with someone who has the expertise in your domain or your field. So, for example, being that Kazar and myself are from the healthcare industry, we are building and doing AI within healthcare because it just makes sense for us because we have that background. So when I'm building an agent or something for a provider or a clinician or a practice, I'm already thinking about, is it HIPAA compliant, right? I'm already thinking about, oh, what it's like when we know like a client might have diabetes or hypertension, but also they might have like a behavioral health issue, and how do you interact with them? Like you got to work with people who have knowledge of those scenarios to make it fruitful. Or you're just gonna have like note transcribers and things like that. You know what I mean? There's so many different ways, and providers around the world are adapting it for back end work. But there's also a small set of providers, people in the space who are using it for patient care as well. A small subset, but it's been helping with like patient satisfaction and things like that. Something like a AI agent that we do, it handles intake. You could call it, it answers 24/7 after hours just to alleviate bandwidth for like, the staff, right? And it's able to reschedule an appointment without having to talk to someone, specifically on demand. So those are ways where it could, one, help with like patient satisfaction, but also support with some of that repetitive tasks and that day-to-day work that someone might have to do. So it's just the way you optimize it and the way you use tools specifically. Yeah.
This is a good point, because there are things that are repetitive, or that may be really helpful for the potential client or the client, right? Where it's not like a frustrating, like, ugh, right? Who's no, I can't get a person right now, or I gotta wait till office hours, and things like that.
Definitely, definitely. So we usually wrap up the podcast with two last questions. This has been amazing. So one is, what's the best channels to actually connect with you? Someone might have heard something that you said or want to dive a little bit more deep into your story. What's the best way to connect with you? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Instagram, TikTok? Or what are the best channels? And then the second question would be, what's one powerful message you want to leave with our listeners? It could be for anything from your personal experience or anything we talked about today.
That's nice. So you can reach me via LinkedIn. Just Google my put in my search in my name, or you can go to the group practice website, which is www.infinitetherapeuticsservices.com. That would be a great resource, because there's also blogs on there. There's podcasts that talk about intimacy, and couples and family, and things like that. And what is the one message I want to give? Well, okay, it's a very interesting era that we're in, because there's an overstimulated awareness of things that are real and not real. So if I go on Instagram, it could be real, could not be real, right? If I have an issue, I can, chat GPT it, right? And is it helpful? It could be, but it could also be harmful, right? So there's so many, do I ask my friends? Do I not ask my, that typical thing where a lot of times you'll see that caption where people are at dinner, but everybody's on their phone.
Right, 1,000%. Or you're walking. You ever seen the one where someone's in a movie theater and it's like that? People are on their phone and you're the only one looking at the screen.
And so I think that maybe something important for people that may feel encouraging is that it's okay, it's okay to try to make sense of this world, even if it's with technology. But take some time to also reconnect to that beautiful thing of just being human, which is, my senses are connected to outdoors, to the person next to me, to the person, who's texting me rather than calling me. Like, do I make time to see them, or right? And so to remember those things that were lost in a big time way because of COVID. And so, that kind of authenticity to self, if you feel you're relying too much on others, to get a sense of that, then, that's a good indicator to kind of take the time to reconnect with your own authenticity, because I promise you it's just as beautiful as the one that you're visually looking at on Instagram, and a lot more truthful. So
Amazing. I love that. I love that. That was powerful. Thank you so much for sharing.
you're very welcome.
Definitely, definitely. So thank you so much for being a guest on the Digital Health Podcast. This has been amazing, and we can't wait to have a part two with you. We sure we'll probably have another a lot to catch up on in the next segment of this.
Okay, well, thank you so much for inviting me.